Alan Clements Uncensored. Thank you for listening to my podcast. A few notes about the presentation. After years of scripted talks, many of them methodically outlined, some even memorized, at least in part, I decided to drop that style and simply speak spontaneously from my heart. So that's what I do. My talks are raw and improvisational. I make them up as I go along. In addition to my World Dharma talks, I also offer at times readings from my books, Instinct for Freedom, A Future to Believe in, The Voice of Hope, and Wisdom for the World. I also offer readings of my personal notes, sometimes guided meditations, dialogues from my World Dharma public forums, interviews from radio and television, and sections from my show, Spiritually Incorrect Meets Relationship Incorrect, The Great Reckoning, and the occasional conversation with someone I find interesting. I also want to express my deep gratitude to the people who have made donations to me, either a one-time or recurring donation, either on the support page of my website, alanclements.com, or pledged a monthly amount as little as $1, perhaps $3 or even $5 a month, through my Patreon site. If you're inspired to do so, you can support this podcast and my work by making a monthly pledge at Patreon. That's patreon.com, patreon.com/Alan Clements, and there you'll find my page. You can use a credit card or pay through PayPal, and your monthly pledge, that's what it takes, just a few minutes to set up, allows me not only to do my work, it allows me to create my art, use my voice, speak my Dharma, free of commercial consideration or advertisers. Thank you from my heart for taking the time to listen to my podcast, and thank you for your generous support. I hope you enjoy the presentation. Good morning to all of you, and good morning to those of you who may be tuning in from around the world. Can't really see it. We have a beautifully sunny day here in Ubud, Bali, Indonesia. Blessed by fountains, good souls, clean air, sensitive souls, practicing remarkable spiritual well-being and physical appropriate social closeness. Complex moment in human history. I would like to share things this morning that have been dear to my heart on how, hi Sharon, how, a friend of mine, remember Sharon from the retreat? From Guatemala? How to turn our living spaces, our homes, our hearts into sacred environments, how to make them dharmically beautiful to complement the challenges that we face by being supportive to overcoming fear and panic, to challenge the concept of isolation when alone, to challenge the concept of communication when apart, to bring each of us closer together at this time when the world and leaders are saying distance and isolate, how to challenge what fear there may be of a global kind of authoritarian totalitarianism and the possibility of a bigger than bigger brother that takes over life as we may fear from novels and realities. And start with the basics of just coming right into that place in our lives called our hearts. And when in doubt in my life, I have tried to come back to my heartbeat.
And as I've said so many times yesterday and over the years, to take the habit out of my mind. Just, if there's anything about meditation more than watching your breath or watching your thoughts or being mindful, it's to take as much as humanly possible with grace and courage, the speed out of life. Meditation for me was the radical act of simply sitting, abiding, and feeling. Okay? We're called upon, asked by leaders to abide in our sacred homes, our temples, and more than that, we're challenged to create a beautiful environment inside of consciousness, inside of our hearts. And many people will turn to mindfulness and meditation as a way to help support the overcoming of greed and fear, projection. How long will this last? Will we make it through? Will there be police on the streets? Will I be fined for going out to walk my pet? Can I make it financially? The terrors that we inherently have as human beings embedded in a society, all so real in a nanosecond. With mindful courage, as most of us know, we can intercept those thoughts and emotions with grace. Each of us have mothers, maybe they're alive, maybe they're dead. They held us with open hand. Meditation is the open-handed, feminine-inspired, compassionate, graceful holding of inner space. Maybe that's an exaggeration of the inner world for some, but maybe not. How to hold complexity with the feminine-inspired, compassionate, brave grace of the epic mother inside of each of us as a meditative expression of how to be with my being. Point one. When in doubt, where I go when I'm alone or in the company of others is to stabilize by being present with my heart. I encourage you, should you want to be animated and real, to help support that real-time Dhamma expression of self-love and self-compassion, stature and dignity. I don't know that it'll be resolved intellectually, but I know that it can be felt as an ease of stress, an ease of panic, an elevation of beauty and trust by just feeling that, okay, in-breath, out-breath. As I said yesterday, my teachers would say, Alan, neither wish to breathe nor wish not to breathe, neither wish to live nor wish to die. By birth, it's inherent that all will perish. This earth will disappear in time. This galaxy will disappear. Anicca vata sankhara. Remember yesterday? Impermanence. Let's start the day today with the recognition of the very fabric of everything that we are. Let's stabilize in wisdom first and logic second. Let's empower Dhamma first and reason second. Every whisper of the sun, the light, the breeze, the poetry, the birds, the wind, the water, the molecules. How many generations before us? 5 great extinctions that included everything that's ever born. All fossil fuels are life regenerated. And here we are today, March something 2020, on this ambient planet, spinning through eternity. And all of a sudden we have a challenge. The bigger context is, if it's not this, it'll be that. And if it's not that, it'll be this. So perspective. Meditation is the fine art of perspective. It's the introduction of the human heart to the realities of being. All things are anicca vata sankhara, upadavaya dhammino. When my teacher, my mindfulness teacher, passed away, my next teacher, Sayadaw U Pandita, he was given the microphone at a cremation of 250,000 people, and all he did was recite Anicca Vata Sankara, all things in this universe, seen and unseen, near and far. Every breath that we take, every molecule spinning through this anatomy, every vein, every molecule of oxygen, every whisper, every birth, every butterfly, everything that's ever been, everything that'll ever be, on this strange tapestry of eternal transformation and change. Anicca Vata Sankara. I think if I were dying and there was someone compassionate enough and loving enough, and those few people, if we got close enough, were there, what would I want? Alan, you've lived a good life. You've lived well. How many people at this very second, 250,000 today, even before the virus, died every day, virtually unknown except to their few family and friends? Every day of the life of the human. Say no more about the factory farming and the billions of chickens and pigs and cows that get slaughtered, ethically killed for whole foods. The genocides, the simultaneous starvation of children, the deprivation of political prisoners. Look at the horrors in this world that we live with. Anicca Vata Sankara. Alan, you've lived a good life. Can you say that to yourself? How well do you live is the art of meditation. How well do you live where you are is the expression of Dhamma in action. Are you with me? Is this okay? Yeah? It's all I know, is how to be in my Dhamma. I have very little financially. I have no car, I have a suitcase. Most of it's filled with papers and books. I wear the same thing pretty much every day. I clean it a lot. I have one toothbrush, a little bit of toothpaste. I have a few friends. I'm okay. Are you okay? Ask yourself, what would make it okay for you to be okay? Meditation is the conscious choice to make that okay sacred. Don't just be okay. Take it higher. My teachers would constantly reaffirm this in our life. You have a chance, a sacred opportunity in this center of meditation with nuns and monks and lay people serving you to take consciousness higher. It's your home. To know your mind is the most important task of your life. Look around the world, Alan. I've said it so many times for decades. Look around the world at all the famines and genocides, all the struggles, the contempt. Look at the domestic violence worldwide at this very second. It comes from unrecognized, destructive states of consciousness called blame and projection and greed and anger, fear, delusion. Do you know these qualities of mind in your own consciousness, Alan? Can you really consciously say that you're mindful of that is fear, not that she's making you frightened? Yes, they both go hand in hand, but your liberty is in knowing your mind. Can you release meditation, making the okay sacred, and knowing the fine sacred Dharma art? How many times I was asked to open my hands? I invite you. It's not letting go. It's not picking up. That's wisdom. Just not picking it up, but being in grace together. If I wanted you near me when I was dying, would I want you saying, Alan, don't go, don't go, don't go, don't go, don't go. There's more to do. I want to make you green tea tonight. I would say, that's human, Ian. That's human, Terry. That's human, Heidi. But guess what? I've lived well. Can you say that? We have a chance here in this day. Allow me to be emotional. We have a chance in this day to be someone we've never known. Something so much more profound and beautiful than we entering this space today. I ask you to write down in your heart, what don't you want to pick up? I'm saying no to that. Temporarily, I'll pick it up again. I'm human. but I don't want to pick up that narrative. What I want to do is love more openly today. I want to take the day as a day, not a month of quarantine. One day at a time in a monastery is considered a lifetime. We were encouraged to take it one breath at a time. Pause. Meditation, much more interesting than mindfulness, is to slow the pace of dying. Just deep chill. The most intimate contact with self and reality and anicca and emptiness and dukkha, suffering. Deep chill. Who will you be today? Is it okay or is it sacred? I'm inviting us, inviting yourself, to take the Dharma as we do oxygen by each breath, and let the analogy of oxygen determine what is it that I want to oxygenate my mind today with. Worry and fear and doubt and anger and greed and delusion and hate and blame and judgment? Or who do you want to be today? That mindful intelligence to me is a crucial decision between an individual who's a revolutionary, a radical, a savant, or someone who's in a state of ordinary habit and panic. Who do you want to be? I want to choose these colors, Dad. My darling daughter, you paint from your heart any way you want, including any color. Mix them according to your desire. Within all of these suggestions of the sacred, I'm not saying dehumanize our psyche. There are times when we will weep. May I invite a collective weep today? It's only human sometimes to cry and so see it as beautiful, right? Women know this. Very few men can cry from beauty. But we're doing it more and more. There's something so radically poignant about this process. How well do you live your day? Now, when I got sick yesterday, I told you, not sick here, but when I was in the monastery, I had the operation, I had typhoid, all the various things, hepatitis, and people came to my room at the behest of my teacher, picked me up, took me to the shower, took me to the answer the call of nature, wiped me, cleaned me. It was unthinkably sensitive for people to do that. We're asking each other right now about community. I would say I would want to have the ambition. There is nothing that I would not do for the people in my life that I love. I draw the distinction between, there are lots of people right now dying that I don't have that feeling for. I don't want to impose collective compassion on me. I'd rather rise to an elevated relationship with my few members and encourage other members in tribes to seek the same type of elevation in their tribes, rather than to expand that community at this point. But I would really want to know that I would be willing to do anything to support your well-being. I think if we were to make meditation a consecration of the sacred, a vow, a determination, not just a reflection. In my epiphany here, when I'm standing and sitting with you in the company of my heart, in the world that we are right now, I'm making a strong resolve to rise to the occasion with the people in my life. Let me learn what it means to do that. Let's not impose, particularly for me, what it means to enact what we don't know yet. But let me make the resolve, there's nothing that will stop me from caring for you. Okay? In Burma, I'll tell you the two stories. And we'll move towards time for open dialogue. Two very important stories. Eventually, after 9 months, when I gained my weight back and I was walking through the monastery, I felt like I was reborn after nearly dying. And I was going somewhere in the monastery to see something, do something. I forget exactly what it was, but it was important. 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 When we're meditating, it's very easy to disavow the sacredness of this space now for something more important than tending to our souls, tending to the sacred, tending to our heart, allowing thought to arise and to dissipate, to access, another point in the meditation, the pre-intuitive, the revelation, and the epiphany. Many people love their thought, they're addicted to their thoughts, they're tethered to their thought, they're very enchanting, compelling, often they're very conditioned and habitual, but it's a very rare individual who's willing to hold in the epic, compassionate, brave mother, okay, I wonder where that thought comes from. Is it true? And to, as you were witnessing and being with a loved one pass away, let that thought just simply go right back into the void and disappear. And practice that mindfulness of not picking up. All of a sudden it goes, oh my goodness, a whole new information source arises. And as you've accessed intuition, instinct, instinctual, mindful intelligence surfacing up from the organic nature of your own being. When we begin to see that the thoughts that we're thinking aren't necessarily to be believed, we relax that, and all of a sudden a new wellspring of information sources. And beneath that becomes epiphany. And all of a sudden the spontaneity of an insight that love is more important than fear. I meditated not for peace, but for the insight of an open heart. Being a mother allows for anything to come and go without the judgment. So I encourage us to encourage each other. And that thought too need not be held. And that thought too can be relaxed. Come back into the most sacred place that we own, called our own souls, our own consciousness, our own Dhamma. What are we doing today in our meditation to beautify our minds? I'm racing through the monastery. I hear from behind me, U Agasara. You don't do that in a monastery, I'm thinking to myself. I'm a monk, furthermore. Monks don't ever do that. It must be a layman. I judged the thought he was lesser on two grounds. You don't yell out in a monastery, and a layman never addresses a monk from behind. Habitual judgments. I ask you in meditation, very often it's not necessarily that easy and pleasant to challenge habitual narratives sourced in blame, evaluation, in judgments. How many people I've met through meditation finds the discomfort of people in your life that you've disassociated from, and you feel this upset, this disconnect. And I feel this urge to want to violate, but then a deeper heart comes up, and you feel that there was some fault of mine involved in the transgression. And I want to seek salvation, forgiveness. Good time now to make peace with our hearts. If there are people in our lives that feel undone, I'm not saying reach out to them. I'm not saying don't. But feel more deeply in there to make peace with what's required to make peace. I remember seeing a monk sit with me in meditation, and he was a very good meditator. A month into his retreat, he became contracted, very rigid in his walking meditation, his sitting meditation, really vigilant watching his breath. And eventually one day he broke down and talked to his teacher in front of all of us and said, I have a memory surfacing that I forgot. What might it be? He said, I remember murdering someone when I was quite young. I completely disassociated from it. The teacher said, how heroic to understand conscience and self-respect to admit that. Validated with honor, first and foremost. I invite us in our meditation. Mindfulness validates with honor anything and everything. I want to see it in new eyes and hold it in grace. What would you like to do? He continued his practice for about a week, and he said, I wish to go back to where I committed this crime and talk to the people in this circumstance. And he left. He disrobed and left. I'm not saying disrobe and leave. I'm saying, wow, what a chance we have to elevate the status of our interior world to make soulful level peace. I turned around in the monastery and looked at this layman. I had no idea who he was. He had this radiant, unconditional sense of love in his eyes that said, Mamidala Kimya, Bante, he said, do you remember me, Reverend Sir? And I looked at him with incredibly mindful, equanimous, present time annoyance. I had the thought that I don't know you, I've just survived death, near death, I'm off to do something very important, and you're asking me, do I remember you? Now, trite as that may sound, I'm going to leave it for you to interpret where there may be understanding or wisdom in your own lives about how we prioritize judgments and narratives and live in a deeply box-shaped world without even knowing it. And I said, no, I don't remember you, with an eye and a heart of, please explain quickly, I'm in a hurry. Meditation is a direct challenge to the momentum of the next, the inappropriateness of the interior expression. You have to face it, whatever it may be. This man is inside of each of us. And he said one thing very simply with a lot of love in his heart. I was one of the people that took care of you when you were dying. And here it is, you know, I was 28 at the time, a long time ago. He lives on in my spirit to remind me the true community is right here, right now. How well do you show up with everything imaginable? Because it may very well be, or maybe it's already been, maybe it's happening concurrently, that we are tending to each other as we birth and die right now. I don't even want to think of what tomorrow may be, but maybe we're all together in this, and this is it. Maybe we all have done this to each other in previous lifetimes. I don't know. Maybe we'll be the ones who do it for each other. And he said to me without a sense of fear or judgment, I'm so happy to see you walking quickly. By way of saying, in meditation, befriend not the stranger, but everything inside. I want to learn to love you, and that too. Meditation, mindfulness inherently is embedded. I want to learn to love you, and that too. When in doubt, open, feel, acknowledge, include, integrate, elevate, and on to the next. When I met Aung San Suu Kyi, I'll stop at this. When I met Aung San Suu Kyi for the first time in 1995, she had been released from 6 years of house detention, along with many of her colleagues had been 5 to 6 years imprisoned. And when she walked out of her house after being released and the door was unlocked, she walked to the front gate of her home, her childhood home, and walked up on stairs and just stood there on a busy street, 54 University Avenue in Yangon, Rangoon, and just stood there. And slowly, their national icon, one of their revolutionary leaders, people recognize she's been released from house arrest, but maybe still compound arrest. And every weekend, at the same time, she continued to do that. People began to anticipate that. The revolution continued. I eventually got there, and I was one of the ones there waiting at the gate. And now there were 30, 50, 100. And she appears, and she begins to talk to the group. And some of the things I remember among those many months, but that first encounters, although we are activists and revolutionaries, and by using our voice of compassion and power and strength nonviolently, it's seen as a violation to the powers that be, and we risk so much, our safety, our income, our homes, our employment, even risk being tortured and raped for the sake of this priceless quality of freedom. Every one of us here are risking that freedom by defying martial law, totalitarian military law, where groups of 5 or more are a crime against the state, where you're likely to lose your home, be imprisoned, and or tortured if you have status. That was where I met her. I, American, had a nice passport that I always believed the American embassy would cover me, and I could just get on that plane and escape totalitarian virus. But not these people. The next weekend came again. Now there's 150. I look around. These people are risking everything. I remember seeing so vividly people shake like that. Shake. I remember seeing a 7 and an 8-year-old I sat with for 6 months next to me every weekend there, risking. And where do they end up? In dog cages in prison. For sitting down and standing up to challenge Big Brother. Rad fucking courage. The prisons in Burma were most notorious. Amnesty called them the most terrifying prisons in the world. They spared nothing to try to break the spirit of freedom-loving people. Aung San Suu Kyi went on to say, although what we do tries to bring democracy, human rights, and freedom to our people, feel the freedom that you are right now and breathe it. Don't do it for tomorrow, do it for today. And I would say that wherever we find ourselves, do our Dhamma for today. Breathe and oxygenate your freedom of mind. Don't let anyone, the political prisoner mantra, don't let any narrative hijack your freedom of thought. Allow freedom to be more important than the thought. Understand freedom of consciousness, the relaxation. Keep those hands wide open. The relaxation of fear. Mindfully, intelligently knowing, I don't have to pick that up. I don't have to pick it up. I don't have to pick it up. The fear, the greed, the anger, the delusion. I can pick up love. I can pick it up. I can pick up courage. I can pick up generosity. I can pick up defiance of community orders to isolate and do it on my terms should there be consent. I'm not going to force my being on you. If it takes two, like sex, ask for consent, and do what you need to do. Fair enough? Well, I met her shortly thereafter, and we knew that the agreement to do a book of conversations together was predicated upon the likelihood of reincarceration or deportation or both for me and her. And so every session was first and last. So I had one first question that I've been wanting to ask her. I was captivated by the concept A Revolution of the Spirit, which she put forth in her book Freedom from Fear, and explained it quite thoroughly in our book, A Voice of Freedom, or The Voice of Freedom, or The Voice of Hope, excuse me. And I said, Do Aung San Suu Kyi, you use the word A Revolution of the Spirit to define your nonviolent struggle for freedom against dictatorship. What do you mean by that? And I've come to see that my meditation practice and the word mindfulness is better expressed as a revolution of the spirit. When I meditate, I'm not mindful, I'm in a revolution of the spirit. I'm refusing to participate in the machinations of totalitarianism outside and inside. I refuse to be co-opted by fear, greed, and anger. Yes, it can happen, but I refuse. I am lethal to myself when it comes to that. These people have helped me to understand bravery means defying orders that denigrate, whether they're self-imposed or externally imposed. Alan, you were outside at the gate for the last few weeks. As you may have likely noticed, people who congregated risked their homes, their savings, their jobs. Now just pause and take this out of theoretical sharing. What if today, us as a group, and even those online, the stakes were so high that we would likely lose our savings, our home, and our jobs. Well, we're in Ubud, no one works here, so it's not a problem. To be here today because it was more important for us to see community expression, love expressed in community, than believing that isolation was an appropriate response. Okay, I'm just going to play the edge. But the price of that was going to be you'd lose your villa. You can do all you want, guys, girls. And your savings, I know where it is. It's gone. You damn well better like each other. That was the message of dictatorship. Okay? Alan, you were out there. Those people risked that. Many of them risked imprisonment. I'm not going to suggest to play heavy-handed here. Italy, China, coming soon probably throughout the Europe. America's talking about it, Canada. It may be a crime against the state to do what we're doing today by not staying at home. Home is a very fancy word for house arrest. Especially when there's authorities out there using the compassion word, you damn well better stay at home. I'm just playing an edge here. I'm not saying this is my truth, but I'm going like, oh my God. Is someone fucking with my thinking here? Is Big Brother let loose in this virus? Is this really kind of a psycho-engineered circumstance? I better be vigilant here, Alan. Totalitarian studies for the last 3.5 decades may be coming in handy soon. And they're likely to be tortured if they do it repeatedly. Cruelty is the best way to break people's spirit. Torture. You were there. Every one of them defied their fear. We have a saying in our country, she went on to say, we're not here to develop fearlessness, but to learn how to act in tandem with it, despite it. And we've coined a term here that came forth from my teacher, Seda U Pandita, her teacher. We learn to quiver with freedom. Because having the compassion to care for self and other, it's not as if we're fearless, she said. But you can look around and people are challenging their fear and their bodies are quivering with the tension of that confluence. That's heightened expression of mindful intelligence, revolutionary action. Okay? She said, in essence, to answer your question, it's one thing. The courage to care about things larger than your own self-interest is the essence of a revolution of the spirit. Pausing right to the end, meditation, tying this into meditation. Mindfulness and mindful intelligence is one thing, but to bring forth a revolutionary spirit when we meditate, when we walk and move, the bravery, the courage of heightened states of beauty. May I invite you, and may you invite me to bring forth a courage to care. I am trying to activate my heart to not isolate in peace, but to elevate in caring. So that no matter what we do that may be right or wrong, ultimately, it seems right at the moment, to make homes sanctuary, to make spaces sanctuary. But when I hear myself say that, Alan, there are billions of people that don't even have homes. Look at all of India, look at all of Burma, look at all of Africa, look at so many places. I visited a place outside of Rangoon with 300,000 people recently, that there is no separation between people. How do they socially distance? So, okay, our real home how well do you occupy your body? How well do you occupy your mind? And take it out of that. How committed are we to learning the Dhamma, Dharma, mindful, spiritual, psychological, existential language of bringing compassion and wisdom and kindness and grace right to the confluence of where life is meeting itself, right here, right now. What are we doing there meditatively to elevate the good, the true, and the beautiful, and not pick up the fear, but learning how to quiver with it? Self-compassion. So practicing quivering meditation when it's required, through tears, through catharsis, through the lack of hope, but not to give up. And she concluded by saying, if enough of our people practice the courage to care, one person at a time, she said, our revolution is a one person at a time revolution. Our revolution will be successful. So I share that with you, and I share it with me as a way to bring home, literally, timeless teachings of radical revolutionaries and how they've gone about challenging outer demons and inner demons, and to make a sanctuary out of our small little cubicles, apartments, villas, homes, millions of people living shoulder to shoulder wherever you are, not to give up on your own heart. That with the right qualities of consciousness, as we most know, anything's possible. I had a friend who I met, a physicist, who was picked up in Burma and put into a 6-foot black cell without windows for no reason other than being an intellectual. I've written about him. He couldn't even lie down, so he mostly spent time on his knees naked, and food was brought into his cell through a little window once a day, and he put his nose and his face close to that window as the only way to breathe. And he described over the course of 30 minutes, and I'll do in 1 minute, how he survived. As a physicist, I began to think out of the box. At first, I hated the dictatorships who I'd never met, putting me in this little small black box. And I found myself contempt and enraged by them until I was the one burning with hatred. And I talked myself out of that hatred by seeing that they too had parents and grandparents. They were just conditioned phenomena, empty photonic vibrations on this field of infinite particles, conditioned by things beyond their own control. Who am I hating? Their leg, their eye, their grandparents, their forefathers, God? I talked myself out of my hatred by being a physicist and seeing conditionality. And slowly he went condition by condition by condition, seeing that the world itself was a massive castle of conditions. Where could I place first blame to the circumstances that I'm in? He reflected on this over and over again, and he looked at me in this interview. And he said, Alan, it's hard to imagine. I always thought that meditation would be my salvation, but I found happiness in my black box. So therein lies, there's epic examples of how we can deconstruct, not just mindfully observe phenomena, but use rational, conscious reflection. I'll close with this. Anicca vata sankhara, okay? The next in the sequence is called anatta. Emptiness of self-reference, that there isn't an intrinsic permanent self that's the constant observer of changing phenomena. A rainbow doesn't exist permanently. A fire doesn't exist permanently. It's a conditioned phenomena with wood, with air. Remove the wood, remove the air, the fire goes out. The same thing with the human being. Look at us. Photonic vibrations on a field of infinity, particles dancing with the idea of centrality called I, me, mine. He talked himself out of that delusion, and he found salvation in his black box. So I invite us, anatta vata sankhara, upadavaya dhammino, upatichava nirajanti te sambha. All things are empty in this universe. To understand the conditionality without permanency is to find the highest happiness. At our death, we're compelled. At our birth, we're compelled. Open-handedness is the expression of meditation. Can I both accept and release simultaneously and abide without fixation? And I'm inviting myself to abide without fixation right now. Open-heartedness. So from my heart to yours, thank you for hanging in with me. Thank you those who are watching worldwide. Take a little bit of a 10-minute break. We'll come back for an open discussion. So thank you very much.
That has been Alan Clements Uncensored. Thank you for listening. You can find the entire list of my podcasts at alanclements.com, along with my books and upcoming events and live broadcasts. In addition, you can also book a private session with me if you wish by phone or Skype on the website. If you're a regular listener or simply feel moved to support my work, you can make a one-time donation or a recurring donation, a tax-deductible one, in any amount you feel comfortable, either on the support page of alanclements.com or a monthly pledge through my Patreon site at patreon.com/Alan Clements. Thank you for listening to my podcast, and thank you for sharing word of it among your friends and on social media. Thank you from my heart. Until the next time, blaze on with fearless love.